Zaffer presents Cold Red, written by Chris Ryan and read by Elliot Fitzpatrick. Chapter 1. Balanivka, Kharkiv Oblast, Ukraine, Autumn 2022. Ruslan Masutov sat in the gloom of the underground shelter, a pair of bulky headphones clamped over his ears, watching the live feed on the laptop screen. Nearby, the other three guys on the team checked their weapons one more time. They had spent the past 4 days living in the cramped space below ground, eating cold rations, and taking turns to monitor the radio channel, waiting for the signal. They were ready. Masutov was the commander. He was a big bear of a guy, with a thick beard, and a nose that looked as if someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. A tattered bush hat stained with dirt and sweat crowned his slab-like head. The hat had once belonged to an Australian, a volunteer in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. Masutov and his colleagues had captured the man during a raid on a village a few miles outside Kharkiv. They had dragged the prisoner into an abandoned shack, stripped him naked, and bound his hands and feet with rope. Then they had taken out their rage on him. For 2 sickening days, the Australian had held out against his torturers. Eventually, even Masutov found himself revolted by the injuries they had inflicted on the man. When another soldier had produced a pair of box cutters, Masutov had drawn his pistol and shot the Australian in the head. What he guessed they called a mercy killing. Later, they had burned the corpse in the yard. Masutov had orders to destroy any evidence of their crime, but he'd kept hold of the bush hat, like a souvenir. A reminder. He had worn it ever since. Like Masutov, the other soldiers in his team were ethnic Chechens. Sungayev and Arsanov had served under Masutov in Syria, and before that in Crimea. Both were dependable warriors, level-headed and calm under pressure. At 23, Islamov was the youngest of the 4 and the newest recruit to the Akhmat battalion. He was pale-faced and slender, with a scraggly joke of a beard and short, buzz-cut hair. All of them were dressed in standard-issue army fatigues, with Chechen flags stitched onto their shoulder patches. On their arms, they wore black and orange striped cloths, the colours of the St. George ribbon, worn by all loyal supporters of the cause. The ribbon symbolised Russian military prowess. Islamov, the youngster, sat apart from the rest of the team and stared vacantly at the wall, his left leg hammering rapidly. The guy was shitting bricks, which was understandable, thought Masutov. In less than 30 minutes, if everything went to plan, they would all be dead. 5 days ago, as the battle for Balanivka raged in the streets, Masutov and his comrades had been taken to one side by their commanding officer and told they had been chosen for a special mission, one that would earn them great glory among their brothers and lead to the eventual defeat of the fascist enemy. But it would also require them to make the ultimate sacrifice, their CO had added gravely. The men had readily agreed, partly because they were loyal soldiers, but also because they knew they had no choice. They had families back home. The CO had explained in painstaking detail the many terrible things that would happen to them if they refused to carry out their mission. It was a no-brainer. They were all agreed on that point. Better that they would die, so that others might live. As an added incentive, the CO had promised that their loved ones would be looked after once they had completed their mission. Mother Russia always took care of her own. The following day, as the shattered remnants of the Russian forces began pulling back from the town, Masutov and the other guys had covertly taken up their positions in the shelter in a lightly wooded area 20 meters due east of the main square. The shelter itself was essentially a massive hole 4 meters deep, excavated by a mechanical digger, buttressed on all sides with an inch-thick steel frame in the shape of a T and covered with a waterproof membrane. The whole area had then been backfilled to ground level with 18 inches of soil. A layer of fallen leaves on top obscured the patch of disturbed earth. The shelter had everything the Chechens needed to survive for several days. A camouflaged filter system ensured a steady supply of fresh air from above ground. Battery-operated LED lights were set up at points around the shelter.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?